Let's bring in our guests to discuss the latest developments. From Washington, D.C., we're joined by Alan Iyer, who is a distinguished diplomatic fellow at the Middle East Institute and a former senior diplomat on the U.S. negotiating team for the 2015 JCPOA Iran nuclear deal. And also in Washington, we have Phyllis Bennis. She's co-director of the New Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies and the author of Understanding the U.S.-Iran Crisis. Good to see you both. Alan, we've just heard from Iran's foreign ministry insisting that the country will defend itself while blaming, once again, the United States and Israel for the escalation. From where you sit, is Tehran signalling resolve, or is it somehow leaving the door open to diplomacy?
No, it's signaling resolve. Iran lost its strategic deterrence after the 12-day war last year, so it was signaling before this latest war started that if attacked, its response would be disproportionate, if not indiscriminate, and that's what we're seeing by Iran lashing out at the Gulf GCC, the Persian Gulf neighbors. So unfortunately, I don't think either side is actively striving toward an off-ramp. I think both sides are trying to signal resolve and to signal that in this sort of boxing match where they're both standing at the center of the ring, punching each other, each is trying to show that it will be the last man standing.
Phyllis, Iran has struck targets right across the region while Israel and the United States continue their attacks. I mean, what right now does Iran's strategy appear to be? Is it deterrence? Is it retaliation? Is it a determination to escalate things? Or is it leaving the door open for diplomacy?
No, it's deterrence through retaliation. As I mentioned, Iran, because it is so strategically weak, because it lacks strategic deterrence, had signaled that if attacked by the U.S. and Israel, it would lash out, trying to regionalize and internationalize the conflict, and that's what it's doing. So rather than strive for a ceasefire with the expectation that Israel and the United States will do this again in 6 months, Iran is trying to inflict enough regional pain and enough economic pain on the U.S. so that 6 months from now, Israel, the U.S. will not mow the grass again and come back and attack Iran again. Iran is trying to reestablish its deterrence.
Phyllis, critics of U.S. policy say this war was avoidable and that diplomacy was working. Do you believe that this conflict was preventable?
Absolutely. This was a war of choice by the President of the United States without legal justification. It was an illegal war of aggression. Like the attacks that Israel launched in June of last year, which the U.S. then joined, the attacks this time started while negotiations were underway. The next round was scheduled for 2 days after the bombing campaign began by the U.S. The Omani foreign minister, who was presiding over those talks, said that there was every piece of evidence needed to say that there was a possible solution available. They were moving forward. They were making gains in the diplomacy. But like what happened in June, the diplomacy on the U.S. side seems to have been a sham. They were carrying out diplomatic appearances, shall we say, while their real goal was to initiate military assaults against Iran. So we shouldn't be surprised that the Iranians are not likely to accept another sort of false promise like that. There's going to have to be a much stronger level of diplomacy to bring this war to an end. And
Phyllis, with Iranian strikes continuing across the Gulf, tension rising also on Israel's border with Lebanon, how close are we now to a truly regional war? How much worse could this get?
Well, it could get a lot worse, but we are already in, I think, a regional war. We're not seeing exactly tension on the Israeli-Lebanese border. We're seeing a major incursion by Israeli forces, both bombing and some ground troops inside Lebanon. We don't know yet whether that's going to reach the level of the earlier Israeli occupations of Lebanon, but that's something that has a long history. From 1978, from 1982, long periods of Israeli occupation of parts of South Lebanon. And the bombing that's going on has displaced somewhere around 100,000 people so far. And I think there will be more who are displaced from their homes because of the Israeli attacks on civilian targets. In the Gulf states, the main targets remain the U.S. bases from which the materials are there for the U.S. continuing attack on Iran, but also, as you say, they are also hitting civilian targets, which is illegal under international law, but not surprising given the way that this war began. So I think that the question of holding accountable those governments that are enabling the U.S. attack by providing the bases that the U.S. has used, there's 13 separate bases with somewhere between 30 and 40,000 U.S. troops on a regular basis in the Gulf region surrounding Iran. So this notion of what a military battle is going to look like is inevitably going to be very, very dangerous, very regional already. And yes, it could get much worse if there are more planes in the air, more drones in the air, more ground troops brought in. The U.S. president has not ruled out the possibility of ground troops.
Alan, you were part of the diplomatic effort that produced the 2015 nuclear agreement, as we said. Looking at this current crisis, is there any diplomatic channel still functioning behind the scenes?
Oh, I'm sure there are. I'm sure the Gulf countries are talking to Iran. I'm sure there's talk. I don't think there's talk between Iran and the United States, but I think a lot of regional countries are talking to the United States, importuning the United States to stop this battle. So there's always low-level communications between states and among states, and that increases during war. But the underlying reality is neither side has gotten to where it wants to be at in terms of strategic objectives. So unfortunately, that means both sides will continue fighting.
Phyllis, with a new supreme leader in place, how unified do you think Iran's leadership is right now? Are the political leadership and the Revolutionary Guard aligned on just how far or to escalate? I'm sorry, I'm told that there's breaking news. We are going, if someone can tell me where we're going here, and we're going to go to Israeli Army spokesperson Effie Defrin giving a daily update on military operations. Let's listen in.
Destroyed the supply systems, and we have also destroyed several aircrafts. They were part of the supply chain. And also in the Middle East, at the beginning of the operation, we have struck several airports, 16 airports in Iran, and we continue to target their capabilities and all their arms. At the same time, our Air Force continue to target the launching platforms in Iran, and every strike is helping us to diminish and to degrade their capabilities. We continue also in Lebanon to defend our people in the neighboring villages, and we continue to conduct several operations against Hezbollah. We have targeted more than 17 sites of Hezbollah, including 100 targets that are part of the armed branch of Hezbollah. We have also targeted more than 5 sites in Beirut and several multi-layer or multi-story buildings in the heart of several residential areas. We have also conducted several operations in Lebanon. We are identifying several facilities that are helping the terrorists. These operations continue as we speak. These strikes and operations, we are conducting them in the region in order to strengthen our defense at the borders. Today, Hezbollah continued to strike Israel. They launched several missiles, and unfortunately, as a result, 2 people were killed and several were injured. And here, from this platform, I express my sincere condolences to their family members, and we wish speedy recovery to the injured. I would like to confirm that the threat is still ongoing. We have the best Air Force system, but it's not immune completely. This is why it is very important to follow all the instructions of the domestic front in order to save lives. I know that regarding the instructions are sometimes frustrating, but we are continuing to monitor the situation, and there are no changes to the instructions, and we will keeping you informed. We are trying to protect our civilians. We will never let anyone harm the civilians, and this is a war or a violation, aggression that we are trying to protect you from it. I will take some questions now. Question. We are talking about going back to school. So do you think that given the proportion and the size of the missiles that we are being subjected to, people or children will go to school? There are no changes to the security instructions. We continue to monitor the situation and to assess it and we did not change any instructions because the security of the citizen is our utmost priority. I'm aware of all the challenges regarding staying in the bunkers and to run to these or rush to these bunkers. Sometimes it's very difficult, especially for young people and children. We take this into consideration, but please be aware that your security is our utmost priority. If there are any changes, we will let you know accordingly and change the security instructions. Question. Why didn't we activate the alert or the sirens in some villages? We are monitoring the situation and we follow all the instructions of the domestic fronts and we will learn from all the mistakes. Do you think that the new supreme leader is one of your targets? 10 days ago, we have targeted and struck the site of the previous supreme leader, and the mission of the new supreme leader is to monitor and supervise all the IRGC operations. A lot of our martyrs' blood is in their hands. And now we continue to conduct several operations against all those who represent a threat for Israel. The election of the son of Khamenei to be the new supreme leader, we are aware of this, but we will not disclose any other information for now. Question. Some systems have sent some alert messages and some others didn't. Answer. We are aware of what happened. There were some cases and we have detected and verified all our alert systems and we are trying.
All right, we're leaving that there. That's Israel's army spokesperson, Efi Defrin, there giving his daily update on Israeli military operations. Let's bring back my guests from Washington, D.C., Alan Ayer and Phyllis Bennis. Alan, listening to that, looking at the trajectory of the last few days, are we seeing the beginning, do you think, here of a long war, or the kind of escalation that often produces a pushback, if you like, towards diplomacy?
I don't think either side at this point is looking for an off-ramp. Israel sees Iran as an existential threat, so it's trying to, in effect, collapse the state, make it a near-failed state. We don't know what the U.S. administration's goals are. There have been numerous statements, mutually inconsistent and not clear. So I think President Trump will continue to cooperate with Israeli war goals until he feels domestic pressure to stop, to declare victory and put pressure on Israel to stop. But I don't see any effective movement where either side is looking to find some sort of diplomatic off-ramp.
But Phyllis, beyond all of the military exchanges, civilians across the region are already feeling the consequences of all this. What humanitarian risks should we be paying attention to right now?
Well, among other things, we heard a mention from the Israeli military briefer just now about some problem, he didn't explain what it was, with the alert system in Israel. One of the major problems, which is not considered a problem by the Israeli government, is that Palestinians living inside Israel, let alone those in the West Bank, certainly those in the West Bank and Gaza, do not have any access to the kind of alert systems, the safe rooms that have been so important in protecting Israeli civilian lives. It's one more example of what it looks like to have that kind of a discriminatory, apartheid system in that country. So I think that we have to look at that. We have to look at the fact that Gaza's gates have been largely closed since the beginning of this armed conflict. So the vast majority of urgently necessary humanitarian goods, food, equipment for clean water, medical supplies, are not being allowed into Gaza. We're facing the return of major threats of famine, of a huge level of a return to what will be the next stage of the Israeli genocide in Gaza. So these kinds of uneven access to protection are very, very clear in the Israeli context. The other thing that we have to look at, there may be a divide at some point between the Israeli position and the U.S. position. One could imagine at some point the U.S. choosing a claimed off-ramp if they decide that the political price that could be paid by President Trump is simply too high. They tell the Israelis, look, we need to end this. We need diplomacy now. And the Israelis say, no, we're not going to stop. This is an era unlike that in 1991, when the U.S. essentially ordered Israel to keep its troops in the barracks, to not participate in the war against Iraq, under the false claims of weapons of mass destruction at that time. And the Israelis abided by it. They understood. This time around, if it's just coming as a request from the White House, Netanyahu has shown himself very willing to simply ignore it. Only when the U.S. cuts off arms, cuts off Israeli access to military aid and military support, will that kind of request be taken seriously.
Phyllis Bennis, Alan Ayer in Washington, D.C., many thanks to you both.